Bryan Driskell, of course, covers Notre Dame, and we have had Bryan on the show before. They have that game Saturday evening in College Station at Kyle Field with A&M from Irish Breakdown. Bryan, thank you very much for your time. Notre Dame, top 10 team. A lot coming back, very high expectations. Your thoughts? This is a dicey game, whether this is a team with a lot of experience or not, but what a great way to start the season.
Oh, it really is. I mean, that's kind of what Notre Dame has done here recently in past years. Obviously, Ohio State 2 years ago to kick the season off on the road, and then Michigan in 2018. But it can leave you a little bit anxious, right? Because you never really know what a team is going to be when you kick the season off. And so there's just been debate for weeks about how good is Notre Dame really, how good is Texas A&M really. But at the end of the day, it's an opportunity for Notre Dame to head down into SEC country and earn a win, which can validate their standing as a program, or you don't win, and then the questions only get louder and louder about how good really is this program.
One of the great stories in this game, Bryan, is that Riley Leonard's playing against Mike Elko. They know each other really well. Mike Elko loves Riley Leonard. I'm even sure that even though we had a quarterback going down when he went to A&M, he probably thought, like, maybe I should give this guy a call and see, just because he likes him so much. What have you heard from Riley Leonard, and what do you expect Mike Elko to try to throw at him, because he knows him better than anybody?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would imagine that if Connor Wegman wasn't at Texas A&M, Mike Elko would have thought a lot longer about maybe bringing Riley Leonard down to see if they can kind of get off to a really good start. But this is an intriguing matchup because, as you mentioned, Mike Elko knows Riley Leonard and Riley Leonard knows Mike Elko. Who has the advantage? I've been asked that question a lot. Every show I'm on, like, who has the advantage this matchup? Mike Elko says that it's Riley Leonard has the advantage. Mike Denbrock kind of jokingly said that he thinks Mike Elko has the advantage. But it's really going to come down to where that matters most, in my opinion, is in the big moments. That third down, that 2-minute situation where your tendencies can kind of manifest more. Mike Elko doesn't know how Riley Leonard is going to play in Mike Denbrock's offense, but he knows sort of the thought process that Riley Leonard has in 2-minute or on third down, and vice versa. And who can maybe catch that 1 or 2 plays where that knowledge of your opponent can have a big impact, because that's what this game could come down to. When you have 2 really good teams, a lot of new faces, a lot of question marks at certain spots, it's who makes that big third down stop, or who makes that big third down play, who has that big red zone stop to force a field goal, or who makes that play to get a touchdown. I think that ultimately is going to be the outcome of this football game.
Bryan, it's been a little while since these two teams have played. They have not played a lot in their history, but man, the last one, 2001, down in Kyle Field. What's just kind of I know Notre Dame plays big teams all the time. That's nothing new, but what's just kind of the excitement level to go down in front of what's a big-time atmosphere at Kyle Field and College Station, play an SEC opponent right out of the gates and kickstart things this way?
Well, you guys know Notre Dame fans love nostalgia, right? So when you're going to play Texas A&M, what do people think about? Well, when did most of the games with A&M happen? When Lou Holtz was the coach and all those Cotton Bowls, right? They think they played like 3 out of 5 years in a Cotton Bowl. A&M got the first one, Notre Dame got the next 2. So people start to, you remember that 92 Cotton Bowl? You remember when, after 93 they beat A&M? That's really what it comes down to. It's 2 traditional programs. It's 2 programs in different positions, different places. Obviously, Notre Dame is trying to establish itself as a powerhouse program under Marcus Freeman. Mike Elko is trying to get things turned around at Texas A&M. And that's really what it comes down to for Notre Dame fans is, I talked about this on the show today, when Notre Dame doesn't win games like this. And I'm like, well, they beat NC State and they beat Duke. And they're like, yeah, but this is A&M. I'm like, guys, A&M was 12-13 the last 2 years, right? Like, you beat A&M, it doesn't mean you're going to beat Georgia. But for Notre Dame fans, they see that SEC emblem on the chest, and that's what it really boils down to is they feel that this is the kind of game they need to win to get validity. But I still say this game is a step towards that. But beating LSU twice in bowl games didn't give you that. Beating South Carolina in a bowl game 2 years ago didn't give you that. You want to get that validity nationally, you got to beat Bama, you got to beat Georgia, you got to beat Ohio State. And so far, Notre Dame hasn't been able to do that.
Tell everybody, we had a national writer on, Eli Letterman, ESPN, and asked him about he had written a story about Marcus Freeman. What you have seen, his growth, and what he's done to change up how aggressive they are when it comes to recruiting.
Well, recruiting aggression has been kind of their thing since he got here. I mean, that's not something that he's necessarily changed. I think what they've done is they've tried to remain aggressive, but maybe recruit a little smarter in certain situations. And so you get a guy like Deuce Knight committed, big-time player, but he's from Mississippi. The SEC is going to keep calling. So do you kind of just say, well, we got him for now, Or do you focus on, okay, let's make sure that we are solidified in the 26 class, so that way maybe if we do lose a Deuce Knight, which I do think happens, then they're going to be in a position to still be okay at quarterback. So I think it's also about they've been able to understand, where do we need to shore up our program? Where do we need to get better? You've got to do a better job recruiting quarterbacks. So they went out and got C.J. Carr, Kenny Minchie, Deuce Knight, Noah Grubbs. Got to get faster on the perimeter. They've done that through the portal and through the high school ranks. Got to do a better job recruiting edge rushers. So they've done that. You got Bryce Young, Logan Thomas in last year's class. And so I think the biggest thing for Marcus Freeman is understanding the positions where Notre Dame was not up to par with those top programs. Notre Dame has completely changed their cornerback roster over. 3 years ago is arguably the biggest question mark on the team. Now the guy that started for them in the playoff in 2020 transfers out this offseason because he's buried on the depth chart. And so that's really been the big thing, is understanding if we're going to compete with those top programs, where do we need to get better? And that's where they've really focused on. So it's not so much that the aggression has changed. It's, hey, where do we need to really focus our time, portal-wise and high school-wise, to really better the program?
Bryan, what do you think is kind of the, I guess, overall viewpoint of the new college football playoff and how Notre Dame fits into that? Obviously, you can't be a conference champ, so that's been well documented. Can't have that first-round bye. But how do you think that works for Notre Dame, big picture?
I think it works good for them. I mean, look, you can't get the bye, but you also don't have to play in a conference championship game. Right. Notre Dame played in a conference championship game recently, and they lost, right? I mean, so it's a dangerous proposition. So I tried to explain this to some Notre Dame fans one time. So you want to join a conference so you can play in a conference championship game so you can earn a bye. You think it's smarter to go to a conference and play the best or second best team in that league is smarter than staying as an independent and getting the number 12 or 11 seed in the playoff? That makes sense to you? I think it's just kind of wrapping their head around, oh, we don't get a bye. At the end of the day, they kind of do get a bye. They're sitting at home while everybody else that's above them is playing in a conference championship game. So I think that works out well for them. It allows them to kind of get that home game, make some money, and get themselves rolling. You know, maybe get a Southern team to have to come up to South Bend, Indiana in December, and get a game under their belts before they then go play one of those teams with a bye. And the way that it's going to shake out most years is, if the SEC and Big Ten are as good as they normally are, then if you get a 5 or a 6 and you win, you're playing the Big 12 or the ACC champ in that second round. So there's a chance, if Notre Dame's as good as they should be, that you're playing two teams that are beneath you in each of the first 2 rounds, which to me sounds like a pretty good proposition if you're Notre Dame. And I'll be honest, I was against the 12-team playoff at first, but as I thought through it, I was like, you know what? This actually has some advantages for Notre Dame. At the end of the day, when they get to that semifinal round, they're still going to have to play the same teams that they keep losing to. They're going to have to eventually lose some of those teams, but at least this way, you're getting a couple games under your belt to really get rolling into that zone and into that region where maybe you'll have a better shot to get that done. And maybe one of those teams gets knocked off before they get there.
Right.
Bryan, what is Notre Dame's stance on the impending terror in the ACC, given that it doesn't affect them for football at all, but it'd be a real pain in the butt to have to find another place to park everything else?
I actually don't think it'll be that challenging, to be honest with you, because, I mean, there's obviously the AAC, but at the end of the day, what would most likely happen is their hockey team's already in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So that doesn't need to change. But I mean, Notre Dame basketball and sports like that, going back to the Big East and playing against UConn again and restoring that, renewing that rivalry. I'd heard you guys talking about that beforehand, is not as big of a problem as I think people think that it's going to be, especially now that Notre Dame's got their new TV contract with NBC, the extension they got. Notre Dame just got a big apparel deal. What a lot of people aren't factoring in is, in the last year, Notre Dame has signed a new TV contract. They've signed a new apparel contract, and they got a huge jump in revenue from the new college football playoff boost. Notre Dame's in as good of a spot as they've been financially in a very, very long time. And that's going to take some of that pressure off of, we need the ACC type of thing. There's places to go, and the Big Ten can say, hey, look, we'll give you the same deal the ACC had. And if they're not willing to do that, then Notre Dame can say, fine, we're just going to go to the Big East and renew some more rivalries in those sports back there. And the travel makes a lot more sense for Notre Dame too than joining some of those other leagues.
Got a question in our chat room from LFG. He says, Smokey, will you please ask Bryan whether ex-Notre Dame offensive tackle Carmody is good enough to start for UCLA, or whether or not he's an FBS depth type player or starter?
It depends on his health. I mean, the problem with Michael Carmody for years has been he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's a talented guy. You know, he actually got a start at left tackle in 2021 before they went to Joe Alt. When Blake Fisher got hurt in the opener against Florida State, they turned to Michael Carmody. I never felt left tackle was the fit for him. He's kind of a mauler. He's an athletic mauler type of kid. I felt he was better suited at guard or right tackle. But if Michael Carmody's healthy, he can be an FBS caliber player. He just doesn't have a lot of experience. He played in 2021, and he hasn't played much since then because of injury. And then, of course, at Notre Dame, if you're an offensive lineman, unless you're an elite player, if you get hurt, you're going to get passed up pretty quick. And that's kind of what happened to Michael. But if he can be healthy, I think Michael Carmody's a good football player. He's not, you know, a future, you know, day 1, day 2 draft pick, but if healthy, he can certainly be a starter at this level, in my opinion.
Was there any I guess, reaction to where there was a story, a quote from Lincoln Riley about the traditional matchup with USC and Notre Dame and down the road? Is how much of that is legitimate?
Well, I mean, I think it's legitimate because USC is at least that's not coming out of nowhere, right? Like I think that's kind of throwing a trial balloon to see kind of how people react to it. And it's kind of typical for Lincoln Riley, right? I mean, it's like, hey, let's create as easy of a path as possible to get to a championship, which I think is just such incredibly flawed reasoning. So if you can schedule your way to the playoff, it doesn't mean you're a better team once you get there. It just means you got there. If you're not a very good team, you're still going to get your butt kicked once you get there, right? But that's kind of how Lincoln Riley thinks, and that's why I don't think he's ever actually going to win a championship. But I'll be shocked if at the end of the day, the people that really pull the strings at USC, which are the people that give the money to the football people and the leaders, want to lose that rivalry. I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. Like, does it make sense to play Notre Dame and LSU in the non-conference? No, it doesn't. Does it make sense to play Notre Dame and Ole Miss in the non-conference? No, it really doesn't. Not when you're in the Big Ten. But to drop both of them, that's the same as like, hey, I don't want that smoke in the SEC, so I'm going to run away to the Pac-12. That's basically what that says to me, and that's who Lincoln Riley is, in my opinion.
Bryan, good stuff, man. Great stuff. Appreciate it. Irish Breakdown. Craig, you have one more? Okay, thank you very much, Bryan. Great segment from you, and also glad we were able to answer a question from the chat room.